Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris,
And I'm Rob.
and it's been a while. Like we said on the John Wick episode, we've been scheduling and figuring out logistics with the new format where we're talking more about music because you folks seem to like that stuff a whole lot. That doesn't mean that we're not deviating. We're just doing more music stuff. So you will see episodes about video games, movies, TV shows, etc. You will just you'll just see more music episodes in between them. So I guess the format basically is for every 4 episodes, 2 would be music related, and then two other things. So that's pretty much what we're going to keep sticking with. We don't plan to become another full-on music podcast because we like talking about other shit too, and I'm sure all of you folks appreciate it. But that's what we're planning on doing, and
we just happen to be best at talking about music, I think, because we're both musicians.
yeah. So it is what it is. You get what you
Yeah.
get, but also like you guys seem to respond the best to our music episodes anyway, so that's good for everyone.
Yeah,
And
we all
also
win.
that also means that we could probably get more episodes out more consistently because music stuff you don't have to do it's not like you don't have to do as much research. You could just or like the research that you can do you could be a lot more flexible with it where like you can't necessarily watch a movie when you're driving or at the gym or anything like that. But or even if you're like spending time with family, but you can listen to music and you can get an idea of where things are going. So that's the easiest way to that's the easiest way for us, and we think that that's going to be a lot more beneficial to everyone here. So enjoy this, and if not, well, go fuck yourselves. I don't care. Go do something else. There's plenty of other options that you have. So not a big deal if you decide that you're done with this. If you aren't done with this and you want to keep going, that's awesome. And if you want to give us money, all the links are in the descriptions and all that stuff. But that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the true strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. We're going to be talking about Ghost today. The band Ghost, the Swedish band.
Also briefly known as Ghost BC when they had some kind of weird fucking copyright issue.
Which around that time, a lot of bands kind of fell into that, so they just started changing they kind of set that trend of just to get around it temporarily, just adding BC to your name.
They were also only Ghost BC in America, I believe. When they toured Europe
Yes.
and South America, they were still known as Ghost. And eventually that was like taken care of, and they went back to just being Ghost again in North America. I actually believe by the third album. It was only really the second album that they had to release under Ghost BC.
Yeah, which if you have an original pressing of that album, it just says Ghost, or an original American pressing, it just says Ghost. But the following pressings would have BC added to them. And I guess if you have post lawsuit pressings of that album, then you would now, like if you found one that was pressed this year, it would probably just say Ghost. So you might have an interesting find if you have a pre-lawsuit record and a in-between lawsuit record.
The album artwork on Spotify still has Ghost BC, so I mean, who knows? Like, yeah, it'd be interesting to find one if you could find it, even the deluxe version.
Yeah, I wonder if the rebrands have I wonder if I wonder if that was just part of the deal that that album had to stay as Ghost BC just for the just as like kind of a timestamp, and then everything going forward could just be Ghost again.
Yeah.
I don't know, but around that time you saw a lot of bands running into weird issues like that, so they just changed their names
The
to
early 2010s.
yeah, to name BC or name
Or AD.
AD in
Yep,
some
Lazarus
cases.
AD. There
Yep.
was.
Yeah.
Uh,
I remember when we dealt with the Zamboni lawsuit, we thought about Zamboni BC or Zamboni AD, but
I think the
I
name
think
of Zamboni was the problem, it wouldn't have worked just 'cause of that.
yeah, it wouldn't have mattered because there was another band called Maniac Zamboni that also got that also broke up because of that lawsuit.
And
That
there was a
corporation's a
punk
bunch of
rock
dicks.
there was a, like, a punk rock, like, indie rock band called The Zambonis that also ended up getting in trouble, but they licensed the name and became almost like an official band of the company in a way.
Yeah, I guess.
Uh, yeah.
But I remember that yeah, I remember around the same time that it happened to us, there was some punk band from California that called themselves Vice Versa, and
Mhm.
the media company Vice, decided to do a cease and desist because Vice was in their name, which is freaking stupid,
Yeah, that is
and
stupid.
there was enough there was enough pushback from the story where they just dropped it. 'Cause I think they had put together I don't know, I think they got, like, a GoFundMe for their legal fees and got a bunch of bigger media companies and PR companies to help them rally behind it. So, they ended up, like, making enough money to fight it like, Vice just dropped it because the feedback because the backlash was so bad, and it ended up just giving them such a worse net reputation and name, especially since they were trying to be, independent journalism that was telling the stories that nobody would, and their brand image was very much the voice of the voiceless, where it was like you're kind of showing yourself to be a hypocrite right now, and it's not a good
Mhm.
look. So they kind of backed off of it.
Yeah.
Um, it would have been nice if we got that sort of assistance, but we didn't, and that was just kind of a lesson. I mean, the real death knell for us wasn't the name change. It was really just like it was changing
Press
all of
release shit.
no, not even that, it was changing the URLs. The URLs is
Oh,
what
that's
killed
true, yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my fault, I didn't know anything about SEO or URLs and how important that stuff was. So, had I in hindsight, I think I kind of jumped the gun and panicked a little too much where things wouldn't have where, like, the URLs really wouldn't have mattered, and I should have just left those things alone, and we probably would have been okay no matter what we stuck on as a regular name. But you live and you learn. It sucks, but we at least at the time had found a formula that worked, so we can always repeat that again in any of our musical endeavors, which is really just release stuff and get a PR company behind you, and they'll
Yeah.
help push your stuff out. And just so that's my advice to all of you in the music world. You don't need to do shows and do all the major social media things or all that stuff. Whatever you're doing, just make sure you get a PR company behind it, and that'll pretty much set you up for success.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our musical advice for all of you folks. But let's get back to where it's
Yeah.
supposed to start. Let's
Enough of the
talk
boring
about the
shit.
yes, yes. Enough of that bullocks. Let's talk about Ghost.
So, Ghost. I've been a fan of Ghost since way before they really got discovered. Um, and I've talked about this before on the podcast. Last.fm was the greatest like music streaming site back in the early like late 2000s, early 2010s. And I discovered so many good bands from them, and Ghost was one of those bands that I discovered from listening to Last FM. Um, so I knew about Ghost like way before they like really like hit it big in America. They were actually formed in 2006, but their first album didn't come out until 2010, and that was of course Opus Eponymous. Um, and that album was so fucking good. I remember when I bought it, I was like so blown away because it reminded me so much of like Merciful Fate. It was like a combination between Merciful Fate and Blue Oyster Cult almost. And they were so good. And then I think where they really blew up was they got noticed by James Hetfield, actually. and he had mentioned them in an interview. Like someone asked him, like, "Oh, what's your favorite band right now?" And he said Ghost, and I think that really gave them a huge like pop. And then they got invited to play the Orion Music Festival that Metallica put on in Atlantic City, and that really like gave them a huge boost because like no one really knew who they were at the time before that. I mean, obviously people like metalheads knew, but they didn't really get mainstream popularity until after that.
Yeah, I mean, they were still very much underground. I mean, for God's sakes, they played Maryland Death Fest. That was their
Hmm.
US debut
Yeah,
in like 2011. So that was the first time that anybody had really, well, that was the first time that the US really saw them. And Maryland Death Fest, for those who don't know, is I've never been able to attend one, and I'm not sure if I ever will be able to, just because there are very important people's birthdays around that time. So I don't think that I can, and they don't really listen to metal, so I don't think I'm able to do that. But I live in New York, so there's a lot of there, so I get a lot of I get the um a lot of the people who are passing through to Maryland Death Fest and on their way back from Maryland Death Fest. So I can still kind of see most of the bands that I would have gone there to see anyway. So it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world for me. There's plenty of other festivals that I can go to, but Maryland Death Fest is the big underground um, metal festival in the U.S. So a lot of the
yeah,
bigger, a lot of bands that you would really just see in smaller clubs headlining, they pretty much all come together and play on those stages, and you get a lot of bands from all over the world that
European bands
don't
especially.
yes, that don't necessarily play in the US ever. They will come through to play that show, and it's really freaking awesome. And you've got like 4 days, 5 days and counting. Sometimes random people show up, like for one Maryland Death Fest on the opening night, MF Doom showed up
Yeah,
and he just did a set. Meanwhile, he's not a metal band, but people were like, "Oh fuck yeah, MF Doom is here."
yeah. Well, we've talked about
So
this before that they're like hip hop, especially like underground hip hop, not so much mainstream, but underground hip hop always had kind of a kindred spirit kind of thing going on with metal and punk rock. I think because it was very much the same mentality, just coming from like the black perspective. I think
yeah,
so. That just like the urban, living in like poor areas and urban and like seeing the urban decay and and writing songs about it and trying to like break free of that.
right.
You
Plus,
know.
also just trying to do everything DIY.
Yes. Yeah,
So
so there,
a
there
lot.
was always a
So
kindred spirit there with that, with underground hip hop and and
yes, yeah.
punk rock and heavy metal.
Yeah, so once they debuted in the US, a lot of I guess flag bearers for a lot of the bigger US bands started started taking notes and getting and putting and bringing them on tour with them, so they started getting a lot of recognition there.
Hmm.
And it really it really started from the jump with them, really. Well, yes and no. So if you want to really go back to the start, the main guy and consistent member of the band,
The only
the
one,
guy who's
the only
the o-
consistent member.
yeah, the only consistent member and the brainchild, you have to kind of understand the way the ghost functions. So it all pretty much comes from the mind of Tobias Forge, who
Yes.
him and the backing he is the front man, and the back, and he also writes pretty much all of the music for
Yeah.
Ghost, and like all of this, then the theatrics, the appearances, this is all his vision. And he has pretty
It
much turned Ghost from more than just a band, but just kind of like a media entity and a pop sensation. I would say that there's once a lot of like the 80s bands, and the 80s arena rock bands and a lot of the boomer like rock bands,
yes.
like leave, like pass, retire, whatever it is, or and that are no longer, playing arena shows. We've said it before that there's not really a whole lot of bands that we could really see being able to carry that, like that arena
Yeah.
tour. Ghost is one of those handful of
Yes.
bands that could do it. And
Yes,
I
and they
believe they
have done
do
that.
that now. Yes.
Yes,
The
the
last
last time
tour.
I saw Ghost a few years well, even the last time I saw them a few years ago, they were doing an arena tour, and they didn't play they played the B markets when they came around here, so they didn't go to, like, the city, I don't think, but they did play a show in Trenton, um, at a smaller, like, hockey arena. I forget what arena it's called, but it's like it's not like I guess it's a professional hockey team, but they're like a farm team for one of the other, like, NHL teams. They're not like like a, they're semi-pro, I guess you could say. So it was a smaller arena. It was probably only like 10,000 seats, or like 8,000 seat arena or something like that. But it was a really good show, and they packed the arena. It was I think pretty sure it was sold out. Um, so and I've watched them go from playing like small theaters to now playing arenas.
Yes,
And
on this last tour for their album Skeleton, did a they did a massive, and they are still doing a massive world tour, and they had never gotten to that heights on their own of just doing the headlining world tour, and they have now been playing arenas. They've been playing Madison Square. They played Madison Square Garden.
yeah,
Overseas, they've played soccer stadiums, I believe, in
yeah,
South America.
yeah.
And they've been able to do, like, now they can do it.
Yeah,
But for years they were either headlining smaller smaller venues,
yeah,
and if they were playing arenas, it was as one of the opener bands
yes,
for supporting someone else.
yeah. Like
But
when they
now
played
they've
Orion
finally been able
Festival.
to do it. But this is 10 years later.
Yeah. Uh,
Actually,
really
no,
even 15
20
years. Yeah.
years,
Well,
20
20 since
years
they
later from
started,
the
15,
formation. 20 since the
16 since
formation.
the first album came out, and their
Yes.
first tours. Um, and
But
I also want to.
even the first tours were smaller. Like
Yes. No. Yeah. No.
they would only do, like, I want to say, less, at the most they would do a month-long tour,
Well, and
but
like you said, they
for the
only
most part it
played
was only
Europe,
like for the most part it was only like 7 to 14 dates.
and they really only played Europe until 2011 when they came to the United States.
Yeah.
Uh, so uh, I also want to point out that obviously we're talking about Tobias Forge now as the founder and like the main guy of Ghost, but it wasn't 100% confirmed who that it was Tobias Forge until 2017. So the band existed for almost 10 years, or over 10 years, before anybody knew like who they were. It was they really managed to maintain their anonymity for that long.
Well,
And I think that was
the only reason why people were able, I'm sorry, say what you were going to say.
I was gonna say, I think that was part of their allure also, the fact that they were able to maintain anonymity, and that was, I think, part of Tobias Forge's vision is he didn't want the big name, like, because there was always speculation that Ghost was some kind of super group, and
Yes.
in some ways it kind of was. He got like obviously established musicians to play with him, and uh they weren't like necessarily like big acts, but like established people that knew what they were doing.
I mean, he originally didn't even want to
um
be the singer for it. He
yeah,
wanted other people, and he spoke to other people about being the singer of Ghost, and they turned it down.
yes. uh so the whole
I
point.
think the bigger name that he was looking at was like one of the Candlemass guys. I think it was the
Yeah,
Candlemass singer that he was looking into.
the whole thing with the anonymity though was, everyone says like their stage act and their get-ups and stuff are all like a gimmick, and all that, but it's like, okay, they are a little gimmicky, but at the same time it was the whole thing with the anonymity was to make it so people would respect them for the music alone, and not like who was in the band. That was the whole point. It was like they wanted to let the music speak for itself, which is why they remained anonymous.
Right.
um
I mean, they
and
probably would have still been anonymous to this day had it not been for a big lawsuit over royalties,
yeah,
which is very common in the music business, where
yeah,
ex-bandmates sue over royalties for
yeah.
one reason or another. And they, well, so basically Ghost is just Tobias Forge and a lot of session guys behind him. The backing
Yeah.
members are known as Nameless Ghouls. Tobias Forge plays various plays on the Pope, basically called
Yes.
the Papas Emeritus, and now you have the newer one who is gosh, what the heck is his name? Not Suprema, but I I forget what his
There's
new name is.
Papa Pepper 2,
Yes, Perpetua. That's the new one.
Perpetua, yeah. And then there was Cardinal Copia for a while. So
Uh huh.
obviously going off of like this theme of like being like the like the Pope of the Church of the Antichrist, essentially. You know,
Yes, and
um,
this stems from Tobias Forge's upbringing. He he grew up in Linköping, Sweden, where the band is based, or at least was based in the beginning. I don't know if they've since relocated to the States or anything like that. I don't think that they have, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has a second home in LA because it's, close to it's the entertainment mecca, and a lot of their webisodes are shot there. But he so he was just raised in a mostly very artsy home.
mhm,
He by his mother. He didn't really have his parents split up when he was a kid, really, and they didn't really have a whole lot of money, but a lot of the money went to art and just a celebration of art. Now, his mother wasn't necessarily she wasn't really religious or anything, but if she took him to church, she wouldn't take him to church to go to mass or to teach him the way of the cross or anything like that. She would go because, I mean, if you churches, however you feel about religion, churches and religious institutions, they're beautiful.
yeah,
The art inside of them is immaculate. The paintings and the sculptures, even
mhm,
just the ceilings, everything is a piece of art and it's beautiful. If you have ever been to Italy, you know exactly what I'm talking about in like the grandest form. But also, if you've just gone to any religious institution, near you, you'll notice just the amount of time that goes and thought that goes into all of this beautiful architecture and structure and the artwork in there. It is a beautiful thing, despite
yes,
how you feel about religion. Like I like going into churches because they're calming and I like to admire the art. Religion is not really my thing. I'm not a fan, but I think but I can appreciate the art and the architecture and if you and treating them as museums, which is what his mother did. But
yeah,
so he grew up with a love for music and a love for art. His stepmother, on the other hand, was very religious and did not like him and kind of viewed him as a nuisance of just, oh, it's that kid that it's my husband's kid kind of thing. Or
mhm,
and she just treated him very badly. And she would say she did a lot of things in the name of Christ, which didn't give him a very good image of what it is to be Catholic. So this this created the building blocks for what Ghost would be, whether he knew it or not at the time. But he grew up and he joined like punk bands, death metal bands, black metal bands. And as he got older, and there was a band called Repugnant that gained
yes,
some kind of some level of underground success. They didn't really release an album until years later when they had been broken up for a long time and then had gotten back together for a brief stint around the time where people were starting to rumor that he was really the guy from who was in Ghost
yeah,
under the when he was in Repugnance, the alias that he was under was Mary Gore. That was the stage name he used. So a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm pretty sure the Ghost singer is the guy from Repugnant. Who's Repugnant?
mhm,
Oh, it's this cool death metal band." And people, which the only basis was that they were from the same area of Sweden. You really didn't have much to go on, but I'm sure people who were in the know
no.
told people and told people and told people, and it got out
Well, this was the
eventually, but
speculation
you still didn't really know. It was all
before it was
speculation.
yeah, it was before it was confirmed in 2017. Tobias Forge was long suspected to be Papa Emeritus, or at least be involved with Ghost in some way, whether he was
Right.
like the singer or one of the Nameless Ghouls, because he was listed in Sweden's copyright like like files as being listed for being a songwriter called a Nameless Ghoul.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and people also he was also in Crash Diet. Uh
Yes, which is a glam metal band, by the way.
yes. And they found, I guess, old recordings of him playing in Repugnant and Crash Diet, and his clean singing voice is Papa Emeritus's voice, obviously. So that was like the other big thing. That was that was like a big indicator that he was Papa Emeritus.
Yes. Now,
So
the Nameless Ghouls, we didn't really mention, but the Nameless Ghouls, they're all a lot of session guys who just wear all black and
yes,
sometimes hoods and robes and things like that. You never see their faces because they have masks over them. So you never really know who they are. So that's where the
they were
Nameless Ghoul
always
thing comes from.
they wear pendants that have like elemental symbols on them, and that was always what they like signed their autographs as, was whatever symbol they were, basically fire element, ether element, water, air, earth, and that was basically what they how they would sign themselves when they were doing autograph signings. But yeah, they were basically just like a bunch of session musicians. There was a lot of speculation for a long time that Dave Grohl was in Ghost because he played on a cover song. I don't know if it was If You Have Ghost that he played drums on.
I
Uh,
think it was that.
yeah, but
I
there was
think it
speculation
was
that he
that.
was a full member of Ghost also because he was just such a well-known musician.
Right. And he
And
also had just said in an interview, I've been known to be a nameless ghoul or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
So that's where
Uh,
people that fueled the speculation even more
there was
of
another
who the other people
uh
might be.
there was another instance where I believe it might have been at Wacken Open Air in Germany, where Destruction were playing and they were hanging out backstage and Tobias Forge was there. And I guess Schmier posted I think it was Destruction. I think it was Schmier who did this, but he posted a selfie with Tobias Forge and said something like, "Oh, if you have Ghost," or something like that. And
Uh,
everyone was like freaking out, like, "Oh my god, it's him!" It's and Ghost were playing that Wacken also. Um, so you know, uh, that I
yeah, I
think
mean, it would
was
have been interesting if Schmier was turned out to be the bass player, because there's no way that anyone would have not figured it out if he was the singer. But
oh yeah,
it
of
would have been
course,
interesting. It would have been interesting if he was the bass player, but he's just so tall, and you could clearly see that all of the other ghouls were not as tall as Papa Emeritus, or at least they didn't appear that way from the way that they
yeah,
were placed on stage.
yeah,
I also wouldn't be surprised if Papa Emeritus if he wears lifts as Papa Emeritus to look more imposing.
yeah, or some kind of like platform shoes or something as part of his
Yeah,
shtick. And
yeah, that wouldn't
yeah,
surprise me at all. And I mean, you can't really see the shoes because of the robes, so like the only times you ever really see you ever see him for the height that he is, I think was Emeritus 3 and Cardinal Copia. But I mean, now
yeah,
the jig is up, but that would not have happened, or at least it would have been prolonged by if there weren't for the lawsuit between the band members. I think it was around
yeah.
the third album that this happened.
It was 2017, so yeah, that would have been a right after the third album came out,
Okay.
which was, of course, Meliora. Came out in 2016. Actually, a funny story about that. So when that album came out, I was doing my internship, and the guys at my internship, they had just also did a Seven Dust album, and both of them were up for best metal performance at the Grammys. So it was like I couldn't wear any Ghost shirts or like listen to Ghost or talk about Ghost at my internship because they were so pissed off when Ghost won the best metal
Oh.
performance album over Seven Dust. Uh
Yeah, I would see that.
yeah,
That sucks, but it's funny.
yeah. Yeah, it was, and they knew I liked Ghost, like that. It was, especially at that time. That was like I listened. Ghost was like one of my favorite bands of the early 2010s. Like I listened to them a lot, and like I said, I discovered them before they really got popular and before they even toured America, thanks to Last FM. So
Yeah,
that was another.
one of my friends had turned me on to them, and he was like, because we would go for like regular, we would just go for regular walks, and then just one day, he starts. I don't like just one of our in jokes is we're either like use the same quote or we're just like we'll use the title or a part of a song as just in just a random way where it makes sense to the sentence and it's just funny.
Mhm.
And I think he was just I forget what the hell he was. It was something from the first album. I forget which line it was, but no, I think he was. I think it was just parts of. I think it was parts of Prime Mover or other stuff
Mhm.
where he was just saying the Italian parts. Oh no, it was he
Oh,
just
Conclavi couldn't.
yes, that's the one.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
just yeah, he just random like he was just like ending in sentences with just "cum clave con Dio," and I was like, "Oh, okay."
yeah.
And then after he explained it, we started listening to it. I was like, "Oh shit, this is fucking awesome." So then he would just say "con clave con Dio," and then I would just say Come nostro," and then we would both look at people and just like go Dio son, and it was just funny, and the other person would have no idea what the hell we were talking about, and we just or like we would just say it in a random conversation. People who didn't know would just think that we were just like speaking Italian, which we were, but like we weren't trying to have a conversation. It was just funny.
I think that was
So
also the really interesting thing about those early Ghost albums too, is that they use all these like Latin and Italian phrases and stuff, and like and with the dark, they've become a little bit more pop rocky in their later albums, but in those first three albums, they were really like dark and like heavy, and
yeah.
like I said, very
Well,
much like almost like Blue Oyster Cult meets Merciful Fate.
yeah, I wouldn't even go as far as to say that they were a metal band in this. I would say that they were in a metal band in the sense where Black Sabbath was a metal band,
Yes.
where that was
Yeah,
kind of
like
the
a
label that.
classic heavy metal band, not like a thrash or any, not like a specific metal genre. They were just like a classic, like 70s style heavy metal band.
Yeah, like I would say that they were. I mean, if it were up to me, I would have just said, and I think Tobias Forges said that they were more of this too, is that I would call them dark rock.
Yes.
I wouldn't even call them metal. I would say that they were dark rock. And
Oh, I would say
especially as the music has evolved.
the first couple of albums had some pretty heavy songs on them though.
They did.
That's
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that
especially
they're metal in the sense where Sabbath was because that was the label that was given to them, but I wouldn't say that that is entirely accurate.
yeah. Uh they well, I forgot what I was going to say.
Especially that they've gotten poppier, but I think poppier in the
They've
sense
definitely
where
got.
that's the natural progression and evolution of the band as it's kept going. And the bridge in
Yeah,
between that is is the 7 inches of Satanic Panic record
yeah.
that
I
kind of
think
bridges the gap between everything. So it's just really interesting
they've
how it
oftentimes
naturally goes.
their newer stuff has been compared to like Scooby Doo music. Uh,
Yeah, I could see that.
which it's a funny comparison, but I mean that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I think a lot of people say that as like, oh, it's not good in that regard. Like, oh, it's silly sounding. And it's like kind of. It's I don't think it's silly sounding. I think it's like they just they're just more like that 70s rock sound. They're not trying to be this like fucking black heavy metal band where they're fucking, or death metal where they're just playing, or thrash where they're staying true. They're just
Right.
playing what they like to play and what sounds good.
Right, and
And
I And I think that kind of lends them to being more of a progressive type of band too, because you see some really weird type signatures, or like Secular Haze is a waltz, which you wouldn't
Yeah.
really see a
Yeah.
whole lot. So it is just really interesting. And I also think that with each record, it's almost it's almost as if it's a giant time portal into music. So you kind of get more of a time capsule of different decades in each release. And I
Yeah.
think that's where I think that might, I'm sure that I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of the vision to almost go retro and eventually go forward, but by starting way in the past. So that
I
by the
think
time you get to a more modern sound of today, that time is already gone. So it
well,
is
a
still
big problem
considered a retro thing. It's just really interesting the philosophy
a
of the music itself.
a big problem I think people that make negative comparisons to what they sound like are, these purists. And a big problem with the purists I feel is that they often are hypocrites on, first of all, like the whole like purist thing of like trashing a band for what they sound like. It really ends up being like a fucking like, oh, I'm just gonna go with like what everybody else is doing. Like it becomes popular to like like trash like a band that like is gaining more mainstream following because they like changed their sound up a little bit. It became like the fucking like standard thing you had to do if you were gonna be any kind of metal purist, like people that trash Metallica's 90s records, which are fucking are good and they still stand up to this day. But like people want to trash them because uh oh, they changed their sound. They sold out. And people have been
But
claiming has sold out since Master of Puppets came out, or even like Ride the Lightning because they had fucking Fade to Black, a ballad on it. So those people are just
you
idiots for one.
you can never please them anyway, and then when bands try to do that and they try to go back to their roots, they're not happy with the finished product
Exactly.
anyway. So
Yes.
you're pretty damned if you do and damned if you don't when it comes to the purists.
Yes. Um and I think the other thing with that is uh fuck, I forgot my train of
You know,
thought.
the other argument is whenever they say, "Oh, they've lost a step," or like, or this, or they're trying too hard. Well, like, one, the guys are 20, 30 years older than they were then. Of course, they're going to
Yeah.
kind of lose a step, and of course, it's not going to sound exactly the same because one, like, production technology has changed. Two, they've they've grown as musicians, so they've had newer and different influences follow them over the course of their lives, and maybe that's affected their playing in some ways, whether it be phrasing or the way that they write music, because because now they have new and different perspectives than they had when they were 20, 30 years younger.
Dave
So
Mustaine,
different influences are always going to pop up, and you can't just you either like this band now or you don't. And if you don't, then just stick to listening to their older stuff and just let them freely express themselves in the way that they want to.
Dave
Just
Mustaine
because
always used,
just because the album is not necessarily good or you don't like it, that doesn't mean that they weren't still trying to express themselves, and this is where they are now. Like, as much as
Dave
we said
Mustaine always used
about,
to say,
sorry,
he
I'll let you speak now.
he always said, and whatever, you could say whatever you will about Dave Mustaine. I know there's plenty of people that have problems with Dave Mustaine, but he did like oftentimes does say pretty smart things. One of which being, you have your entire life to write your first record. It's your second record that's really hard to write because you can fucking write songs your whole entire life and have 10 songs for a record, and then it's your first record. Now write 10 more songs and be able to like release them right away. So it's always harder to write that follow-up record. And I
Right.
think Ghost have shown they can consistently write good records and records that perform well in a more mainstream audience, which again, the purists like to fucking say, oh, well, that means they suck because they're mainstream, which is the stupidest thing ever. Like, there's plenty of mainstream shit. I agree that sucks. But just because a band becomes mainstream because they have a sound that more people like doesn't mean that they suck.
Yeah. And on top of that, that means that they have more financial uh, and creative freedom to be able to play and write the music and
Yes.
dedicate more focus to that and do more tours, and you have more opportunities to see them. So I'm not really sure why that's a bad thing.
People just
St-
again, the
I
internet
think,
makes people,
well,
like, wanna just complain about anything, and they will find
right,
things to complain about no matter how stupid it is.
right. I mean, there's a good and bad sellout, I guess you
I
could
I
say. If you want
I
to do
learned a
if you want to go into the philosophy of sellouts, there is the selling out where you sold out a big arena, you sold out major shows, you're making money and you're successful. There's nothing wrong with that, and I think everybody, if they could, would want that for
I think it's a
themselves.
lot of jealousy from people that don't that, they're not at that level too.
I think
They
so for sure.
smaller bands will trash bigger bands just because they're big and they do a lot and they like, it's like, oh well, and it's a jealousy factor. It's like I wish I was at that level, but I'm not, you know, and it's
Right.
stupid.
There is also the moral sellout, which that is the problematic one.
Yes.
That's the selling out that you don't want to be. And if you see someone doing that, then you should call them out in that way. So
Yes.
if they're and so for example, if they do something that they have previously said in interviews that they would never do, then that is a different type of sellout. That is a moral sellout. And yeah,
Right.
you should have an issue with that because they're not being true to themselves and they're going back on their word, or they're not keeping their promises or whatever it is. Yeah, that absolutely. Or if it's very obvious that they're being a slave to the machine and
Yes.
they're not, and they're just kind of taking it and they're not trying to keep the original vision. Yeah, I
Or
totally
they're
get that.
an industry plant, which we're going to talk about in a couple episodes coming up.
Yes,
So stay
that's
tuned for
that.
that because there's a
That's a
couple of
whole
bands.
nother, yeah, that's
Yes.
a whole nother ball of wax, which,
Yes.
that also should be called out. And
Yes.
but, we'll get into that for another day.
Yes.
The big reveal though that we were talking about with the lawsuit from the previous band members. So there was a royalty issue around the time of the third album, and all of the all of the Nameless Ghouls came out and did basically a class action lawsuit against Tobias Forge, saying that he owed them a lot of royalties and back payments that he never made under under the first three albums, and tours and merchandise and everything else. He just owed them royalties, and Tobias Forge looked at them and said, "No, I didn't. You guys were never," and they felt in this lawsuit they said we were all members of the band. We deserve our fair share of the wages, and we are owed back payments, and he's not giving them to us. Now, Tobias Forge, from his argument, is that this was always his project. He was always the main guy, and that they were always session musicians who could be replaced at any point in time. And this
Yeah.
is why he wanted to keep the anonymity going for the Nameless Ghouls and even Papa Emeritus, where anyone at any point in time could be replaced, including him, but likely not him, because he was kind of the figurehead. And it was his name as the publisher and everything like that. So and because there wasn't enough evidence, the court ruled in favor of Tobias Forge, but in doing so, with this lawsuit, they had to name him. So
Yeah.
that's how it came out that it was concrete proof that it was him.
And it really
Now,
just confirmed everybody's suspicions. It really didn't say like, "Oh my god," there wasn't like a big shock to everybody. We're like, "Oh yeah, that's what we all figured. It was Tobias Forge from the start."
right. And the names of the other nameless ghouls who subsequently quit came out as well,
Yeah.
which that kind of disappointed people a little bit because they were hoping that all of the ghouls were big name musicians who were
Yes.
just kind of doing this as a side project, and it would have been really neat to find out that there were some really interesting characters playing that you never expected them to
Yeah.
be in this band, and that it really was a super group the whole time. But people got over it, and they kind of just looked at each other and said, "Well, the music's still good, so who cares?" And
Exactly.
it didn't really have as big of an impact as one would think. Now, the inception of Ghost. Well, we touched on this a little bit, but I just wanted to get back on this with the releases. So Tobias Forge wrote and recorded everything for the Ghost demo, and even the original press release photos was just an old man mask that I think they just put makeup on for the original Papa Emeritus photo shoot. And the Nameless
Yes.
Ghouls weren't even the session musicians that played on the upcoming album. It was just friends and family who just wore these robes, and they had the thing for just the for the press release. But he released the original Ghost EP on MySpace,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you remember that, that was another awesome gateway into music. And he just had the top eights as just other bands that he liked, and he would hope get find out about them through word of mouth. And then within a few days to a few weeks, all of a sudden it went from being a no project overnight, where Tobias Forge at this point, he wasn't necessarily done with music, but he never thought that this would blow up in the way that it did.
Mm-hmm.
And since his death metal days, he had really just been relegated to a pretty normal, quiet life where, he got married, he had two kids and whatever, and he worked at a call center in Sweden, and that he just figured, okay, well, this was it. I'm just going to write music for myself, and if something happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Which is kind of the best way to do things. And because of MySpace, he starts getting a lot of attention overnight.
Mm-hmm.
In and he like record labels and stuff start reaching out to him, and he ends up joining with I think Rise Records, which is owned by Lee Dorian of Cathedral, and the origin and the was the original singer on the first Napalm Death album.
Mm-hmm.
So he ends up going on that record label, and everything else kind of just goes from there on distribution, and then they start touring and yada yada yada. It all blows up and turns into much more than he ever expected it to turn into. This then, I guess you could say, leads us to the lore, which we haven't talked about a whole lot, but the lore of the band is what makes it even more interesting, and it also
Yeah.
fuels the vision, where it's very theatrical, and
Mm-hmm.
it's brought to you as though you are attending some kind of satanic mass,
Yes.
and it really sucks you into the world of Ghost
Mm-hmm.
in turn with the music and the imagery and everything else.
And they've done promotional videos and interviews in character as Papa Emeritus or Cardinal Copia. So it goes beyond just their live show. It really is like a whole image surrounding the entire band. You could
Mm.
argue that, similar to what Kiss did before they took their makeup off, where they actually were the characters they played, like the Starman and all that. Uh, but I think Ghost does it better. I think it's less of
Well, first
a
of all, they're better musicians,
yeah. I was
hands
gonna say
down.
it's definitely less of a gimmick for Ghost. It's
Yes,
more
but
part of
for
their
sh-
theatrics is like part of their just like their whole image, and it's not like they don't let it take away from the music or be like a substitute for being good musicians, like another band that was just mentioned.
yes, I mean, but obviously the root of all this kind of starts with Kiss, which
Yes.
we could do at some point we'll do a whole separate episode on Kiss because we don't have enough time. I will just add um to the story of how Tobias Forge really just started Ghost and had this idea and released the music on MySpace. The day that he released the music was very much bittersweet because he had a much older brother from his parents' marriage, and I think from his parents' marriage, if unless his father was married previously to that marriage. But he had a much older brother who was about 13 years his senior, and he had unfortunately passed. And his brother was the guy who got him into heavier music in the first place when he was maybe 3 to 6 years old. He just kind of it was just one of those visiting days, or just, hey, go spend time with your little brother, even though he's really just a small child and there's only so much you could do with him. So he pretty much just introduced him to hard rock and early heavy metal through that, and he'd
Mm.
been just playing instruments and things like that. So that's where his appreciation for music really comes from, outside of his mother's appreciation for art and introducing the arts into their lives. But his brother, his older brother, had unfortunately passed away the same day that he released the Ghost material and his brother passed away due to an undiagnosed heart condition that he had. So it's a very bittersweet day, and it really sucks. But also, you could see why Tobias, no pun intended, forged on. And there is a there is a piece of his brother in everything that he's doing. It's almost kind of like in the movie Walk Hard, where where the ghost of his brother who dies in the machete fight says, "You have to be double great for both of us." It's almost like he kind of did that. So, yeah, we'll continue with the lore now, but I did want to add that because I had forgotten to mention that earlier.
Uh, yeah. So, I don't know. I didn't really have much more to say about it. I thought, they have always usually there's a new Papa Emeritus for every album and every tour, and the old one is either killed off or kidnapped or something bad happens to him at the end of like the current tour. So like Papa Emeritus 1 was like killed off, and Papa Emeritus 2 took his place for the second album and the second, tour supporting that album, basically. And at the end of that tour, he was killed off, and the third, and that was basically been, the kind of like running gag that goes along with Ghosts, of that every album and every tour, the Papa Emeritus is replaced by a new one, basically.
Right, and the only one that survived has been Cardinal Copia, which is
Yes,
really interesting. And you always have and the lore is explained through webisodes, which were originally done to promote upcoming tours
yes,
or upcoming releases or anything like that. And now they've kind of taken a life on their own, where there's 25 webisodes in spanning the last 13 years. They pretty much started from Infestizumam, and the and the band has continued to make all these very funny webisodes or these little insider things. Um, like they did something with Noisy where it was a two-parter where it dived into Ghost on tour and who Papa Emeritus 2 was as a person, where he was
hmm,
pretty much just a crazy old ladies man
yeah,
who saw Ghost as kind of a business, but you know, he also just he also really liked to party. So it was just really funny stuff that you would see. And then the other and then you'd see the other nameless ghouls just in interviews off to the side, just saying, "Yeah, he's kind of an asshole." So
yeah.
there's just really funny stuff in there, and I don't think that Ghost gets enough credit for being really hysterical people. With all of their webisodes, they're
No,
really funny.
it's very tongue in cheek. All of their, lore and even the lyrics to a big extent are very tongue in cheek, and
Oh yeah,
it caused a lot of controversy, especially in the United States, with the whole satanic panic thing, because their lyrics are
right,
like extremely satanic, like black metal level of Satanism. Uh,
right. But the thing is, they got one of their songs got banned in the U.S. because not because of the satanic imagery or the lyrical content, but because of the nudity. Which
yes,
Tobias Forge even called out and just said that the U.S. were just fucking pathetic, which they
yeah,
are for that. It's a stupid reason.
yeah,
Outside of
and
all the
things have
real things
changed a little bit.
that would be ban worthy, you pick the least offensive thing. Go figure.
Well, and then they've gained more traction now, and obviously in the
Well,
United
of
States
course.
beyond just that, being an underground band, and they've been on like late night shows. I think they were on with Stephen Colbert one episode and played, and so that they're definitely like that has kind of died down a little bit. Um,
Yes, but the the lore of ghosts ends up extending to more than just an anti-Vatican. It's this whole syndicate called the clergy, where there it's it's a secret society where their goal is to control governments and to control the masses, and they do that through the music of Ghost and the charisma of the Papa.
right. And fucking
And
idiots think that they're being serious about that when it's very much clearly a tongue-in-cheek reference to how, like, religion, mainstream religion and government is in real life. Like, they're trying to, like, suggest, like, hey, look, this is exactly what's happening. Like, we're just pretending to do what they do, basically.
right, and the reasons for killing slash firing all of the papas are always are usually pretty much the same, that they're unable to carry out the agendas, or that they're unfocused,
Hmm.
or or that they didn't or that they didn't achieve some of the goals that they were supposed to within that time frame, or that they only had a contract for, or at least in the case of Cardinal Copia, where he never officially really got promoted to Papa. And
Yes.
so instead of killing him or making him disappear, they just gave him a cushy desk job. So they gave him
Hmm.
a promotion, but he in the webisodes is just unhappy with that, because the person that they give it to, the Papa, in almost every case, is much younger, except for the case of the transition of Emeritus 3 to 4, I think, because 4, no, I'm sorry, from 3 to Copia, I believe, because 3, or yeah, because 3 to Copia, because they had a younger guy who just, what they thought was a much younger guy, and then they moved to an older guy again in Copia, and then Emeritus 4 is his fraternal twin. No, Perpetua is his, either, no, is it Emeritus 4 or Perpetua? Or does
Perpetua
it,
is the newest one. It's Papa 5.
right, or did Cardinal Copia become Pop Emeritus 4 and then he got
Yes. Yeah,
demoted? That's what it was.
Cardinal Coppola became Emeritus 4.
That's right. The lore, there's 25 webisodes and counting, but I think Tobias Forge has recently said that he plans on, he hinted that it may come to an end at some point. And so far, Cardinal Copia slash Emeritus 4 has been the only one who has survived. In the most recent webisode, which was released a few weeks ago, he he left the clergy, but there's like an illusion at the very, very, very end that he could have died as he left, but it's not clear if he left or he went and survived, because when it ends, a truck rolls by and then there's a blood spatter as it goes to black. So it's unconfirmed what happens to him, but I would like to think that he survived until we get to the next one.
Yeah.
But yeah,
There's also
Perpetua is his fraternal twin brother.
there's
And
also rumors
Papa
that
Nihil is another two, and they also have I forget her name, Sister something or other, where
yes.
um she is the, I think it's Sister Omerita or something like that, where she is the one pulling the strings, or at least she's the one who is in charge of the papas and getting orders from whoever she is getting it to. And there's other
Mhm.
characters too, like Papa Nihil dies, and he Papa Nihil dies in between Emeritus 2, in between Emeritus 3 and 4 slash Copia. There is Papa Nihil, who is just kind of a placeholder Papa.
Mhm.
And it it is revealed through the webisodes that that Cardinal Copia is his illegitimate son, because he had a thing going in the 60s with Sisto Emeritus, and because he was too promiscuous in the 60s, 70s, she left him and didn't tell him that she was pregnant with his child at the time. So there's a whole thing there. But one of the gags that they have is that when Papa Nihil dies, they he comes back as a ghost in his old man form, and Cardinal Copia sees him and goes, I thought that you came back in your prime. And he said, yeah, I thought so too, but it turns out you just come back, and your ghost version is the last version that you were when you died. And then Sister Emeritus comes back as herself from the 60s, where she was young and hot, and and she just says, "Wow, you look younger." And she goes, "Yeah, I came back you come back in your prime." So it's just really funny that it turns out that Papa Hill's prime was when he was an old man.
Yeah.
But they reanimate him for certain songs on stage.
Yeah.
so that he could do his saxophone solo, which is really funny.
It's very reminiscent of like Alice Cooper's stage show a lot, I
Yes.
think. And if anybody's seen Alice Cooper live, his stage show is like just over the top and amazing, and he gets decapitated on stage. It's really fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's like Kenny. He just dies all the time, and he comes
yeah,
back the next show as if nothing ever happened.
yeah. So there's definitely a clear influence on Ghost with Alice Cooper's, and I think really like any like shock rock, like big elaborate stage show of the last 50 years has been influenced by Alice Cooper.
Right.
Uh,
Well, I do remember that in their earlier days, Ghost was also being referred to as a shock rock band, and I'm sure in some
yes.
music outlets they will occasionally get that label.
Yeah, I could see that, especially with like in the United States where like people can't like the satanic lyrics are way too much for our virgin ears, I guess.
Oh no.
Here in this country.
Yeah, that
Um
and nudity.
yeah. Um
But violence is fine, of
yeah,
course.
yeah, cut someone's head off, but if you show a titty, then you're fucked.
Oh no.
Um, I think so recently, there's been rumors that Ghost are taking a break, and actually, the Encyclopedia Metallum page lists them as on hold right now. Uh,
Interesting.
there's been a lot of rumors swirling about that Tobias Forge wants to take a break from touring for a little bit, or there might be recording a new album, or he's going to do something like another project. He wants to work on a different project, and he's actually listed as like uh on Encyclopedia Metallum as like being his own uh like having his own band, where it's just Tobias Forge under his own name.
I could
So
see that. I
yeah,
I also wouldn't be surprised if he just wanted to spend more time with his family now that he's probably made a ton of money off this thing. He doesn't really have
exactly.
to, he could just kind of come back as Ghost and do a big arena tour at any point in time that they want to. So now that it's such a well-oiled machine, I also wouldn't like he could spend more time with his family and just, do a lot of catching up. So I would not be surprised at all if he wanted to take a 2, 3, 4 year break and then come back. So, if he wants to do that, good.
Yeah.
He's achieved much more than he probably ever expected to with this thing. So,
I
fine.
yeah.
Well deserved break.
Yeah, and I hope they come back and go on tour again because I love seeing Ghost on tour. I've
Yeah.
seen them. I don't even know how many times. At least 6 times I've seen Ghost.
Oh wow.
Um,
I've only seen them the one time on the Meloria tour.
no,
They
I
we have also said this in the person interview. I'm sorry, in the person episode from
yes,
however many years ago. Check that out. Purson.
yes,
That Ghost brings really amazing opening acts on with them, and they're indie bands that you've never really heard of, and they all kind of fit with the Ghost imagery and
yes,
music style. So you get a really cool show front to back.
yes. Like I said, person was they were amazing. I got really into them after that show. Also, King Dude. He toured with them
Yeah,
when they played. That he's really cool. That guy. He's got like
I
almost
forget.
like this weird like goth surf rock like uh dark ambient kind of sound. It's very bizarre, but it's really good.
Yeah,
Um
it's very cool. I
yeah,
forget who the hell the band was when I saw them. I'm
that
sure if
was
you look it
Person.
up, you'd be able to find it. Was it Person?
Yes, that was we saw them with Person because actually I wanted to talk about that show because that was the Meliora tour, that was their that was I think my third or fourth time seeing them. And that was when they got really popular. Though that third album like blew up in the States. Like I said, it was nominated for I think they won the Grammy for Best Metal Performance. Um and that show pissed me off because it was packed with people, and it was packed with all these like newcomer fans that like really didn't know Ghost too well. They only knew them from their third album, and they were all these hipster douchebags that had no fucking state pit etiquette or show etiquette at all. They pushed to the front. They fucking like were like just like not like getting like knocking people out of the way. It was really annoying. So that show in particular was really like it pissed me off. It was a great show. I wasn't like at all pissed off at the performances because the bands were great. Person was amazing. Ghost put on an amazing set, but the crowd that night was horrible. It was a bunch of fucking hipster assholes.
Well, that sucks. The crowd at my show was great.
That was
I
the
I
same
saw
show.
them. I saw them. No, in the city, in New York.
Yeah, yeah, it was at Webster Hall, I think.
No, I didn't see them at Webster. We didn't see them at Webster Hall. It was fucking Terminal 5, which is a
Oh,
weird
Terminal
venue
Five.
anyway.
Yeah, Terminal
The way
Five.
that the layout is, it's weird because it's kind of more set out for, it's kind of more set up for hip hop shows. So metal shows are kind of odd because you can't always hear everything depending on where in the stage are. There's something about the acoustics in that place where it's just built funny and you enter through in an unconventional passage into everything. But if you go there for a hip hop show or a rap show, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
Like I saw Naughty by Nature and Cypress Hill for a Halloween show there once, and that was fucking ridiculous.
yeah.
But you know, you couldn't even really see Cypress Hill just from the back, just because of all the weed smoke just above everybody.
That's
I
fucking
mean,
hilarious.
yeah, it was a great time. I definitely got a contact high, but they were also throwing joints like out from the crowd, from the stage to the crowd, left and right.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a really fucking kick ass show. But yeah, I got to get around to seeing them again. And I mean, the missus is not, she's not like crazy into metal, but like here and there, she'll listen to something that she's just like, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. I don't mind it. So Ghost is one of those bands where I would like to take her just so that she can, just to get the experience of it. And even Ghost, you know, even the music videos have an old school feel to them, and they
Yeah,
tell a story much like 80s music videos would, or older music videos were back in the day when they married it a whole lot more, and
yeah,
MTV was what it was supposed to be instead of the zombie it was for years and is now finally dead in the ground and buried until some private equity jerk off resurrects it, and it sucks even worse than it ever did, which I'm sure
yeah.
that day is coming. You
Oh,
know,
I'm
just
sure it
look at
is
what they
because
did to poor fucking Toys R Us and
nostalgia is
FAO
the number
Schwartz.
one fucking like seller right now. All they do is fucking all they want to sell is nostalgia because I guess they, it's the one fucking thing that they could fucking get people's dopamine up on is like, oh, remember how good the fucking 90s were?
Yeah. So that's probably coming
Yeah,
sooner than you think. But I digress. Perhaps at some point we'll do an MTV episode too, and we could talk about the glory days and then the downfall.
yeah,
But that's another time. That's another story for another time. But the lore of Ghost also persists through the music videos. For example, the reveal of Papa Perpetua was didn't it started through a webisode and where Cardinal Copia was supposed to open the gate so that they could reveal the new pope, and he was just pretending that the gate wasn't working, so that way it's basically, if we can't see him, he's basically, if he can't show up, then he can't replace me, kind of a thing.
hmm,
And the reveal was the music, and then the TV showed up, and they just said, "Oh, okay, we can just reveal him through this." And he kind of had no choice, and he got revealed in the Satanized music video at the very end.
yeah,
So, and some characters die in the music videos where it's kind of set up in the webisodes, or if they even die on tour to in the grand spectacle on the road of filmed concerts, so they can put the song on YouTube and people could see the performance and see the character get killed or replaced or whatever. So the lore, it's really cool how they have every aspect of Ghost tie itself to the lore,
yeah,
and they take advantage of every possible form of media to do so. And I don't think there's been a band that's ever really done that to that degree.
yeah. No, I mean, you could argue again, Kiss maybe, but I don't know. I think really Ghost has done it better in a lot of ways because especially because they were so secretive about it for so long. and it really only got revealed who Tobias Forge really was in
Well,
2017.
they also are still very secretive about who the current Nameless Ghouls are
Yes.
when they are members of the band, because
Yes.
they now have NDAs in place where they can't talk, or they probably have had NDAs in place for a long time, where you're contractually obligated to not discuss ghost or reveal that you are a nameless ghoul
Well,
while you are active.
Tobias also still only does interviews as Papa Emeritus. He doesn't give interviews as himself, really.
No, he
So
has recently. In
he has,
recent years,
like,
he
really
has.
recently, but for the most part, he kept to the Papa Emeritus and or
Yes.
slash Cardinal Copia, character basically.
Yeah.
Even after the reveal.
Yeah, and now they have added even more nameless ghouls where there's about 8 people on stage at once because the stage show has gotten bigger and the music has changed so much. And I think one of the other things that I wanted to mention is each album a different they're because the era that they're trying to represent is different. I would also describe them as an evil ABBA to people who don't, like, in the
Yeah.
easiest way to mention it, of just like picture an evil ABBA that's Ghost, and they have covered ABBA multiple times. So there you go. And they are also from Sweden. So,
Yeah.
put that feather in your
And
cap.
and they've also covered ABBA, so
Yes, yes. Um, but I wanted to point out that because the era that they're trying to represent is different, and because they're adding a little bit more instruments and changing up styles a bit, the mix of the albums and the feel of the albums are also very different because certain instruments that I want to highlight are more prominent in the mixes, and that's clearly done on purpose, but I think it is really cool. Like in more recent releases, when they started adding keyboards, the keyboards are more prominent, and when they started adding backing members, the backing vocals were a lot more prominent. Where even if there were backing vocals on previous records, they were not featured as high. Or I, I think in the first album, the bass is a lot more present, and then in the second album, you hear more guitars
yeah.
and more choral arrangements too. So it's really interesting how everything changes. I don't really have a favorite album. I kind of bounce between Infestizumam and Prequel.
Yeah.
And I think either of those albums, I think Prequel is the best they've ever sounded. But that's my personal opinion, and I like to go back to the first album here and there also.
The first
So,
3 albums are my go-to usually with Ghost. I think
mhm.
that was, like, their best work was the first 3 albums.
Yeah, I don't have a favorite song. I think it dabbles between. For a long time, it was Goulet. I also really like Con Clave con Dio. They also do a spectacular cover of Iron Maiden's Phantom of the Opera, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, was actually just listening to that recently. Elizabeth is probably my number 1. It was for a long time. It'd be hard to choose now, but Elizabeth was always one of my big favorite songs with them, from the first album.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many, and also the
Yeah.
album covers, the artwork is another incredible thing about Ghost 2. The art
Yes.
and the imagery is also another thing where you don't see as much as you used to, where it's also very prominent in everything that Ghost does, where sometimes the art references old movies like the original Nosferatu or
Yes.
Metropolis,
Mhm.
and you also and it's also really really cool how it's all still keeping itself within the Ghost universe. Or Infestizumam, I think that might be my favorite cover because it's Amadeus. It's
Oh,
basically
yeah.
an evil version of the movie Amadeus.
Yeah.
And it's just the whole package of this band and the vision. It's just so fucking cool, man.
Yeah, they really, the visual aspect of it is just as good as the music, and again, that's another thing that Ghost does well is that they don't stand behind the gimmick. Like, they actually can stand on their own. If it was, like, just them playing music, it would be as good as it was, with the whole, like, theatrics with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and I think, there's not a whole lot of bands where Ghost where the it's the experience. You're like Ghost itself is an experience.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the other reasons why they are poised to be that next big arena band for years to come.
Yeah.
And who
Yeah,
knows what they're going
I
to give
agree.
way to. But, just really cool shit, man. I can't wait to see what they do next. And, even if they decide that after the hiatus that they want to do one final album and a farewell tour, fine. Because for all we know, that the full vision has been achieved, and he kind of wants to wind down Ghost, which no shame in that. You made your money. You could come back whenever you want.
Yeah.
Like if Tobias Forge chose to end Ghost tomorrow, I I wouldn't care. It would be, of course, I'd be a little sad that I wouldn't be that, but but that's fine. Do what you want. You've already left the full impression on the world of all you can do. Now, of course, selfishly, I hope they continue on for another 20 years, but take all the time you need right now and do what you're going to do next. You've
Yeah.
earned it.
Yeah. I agree.
He also has said that he's wanted to do Ghost as a full length movie, and I know that they do have some live shows like Right Here, Right Now, which is a concert slash mini movie that helps tie the lore together. And they also have a live concert release, which what the heck is it? In memoriam or something like that. I forgot what it's called.
Yeah.
Celebration and Death or something like that. But they it really, it's fine. They can do whatever it is that they want to do, and good. Just keep going. Keep going. Take a break. I don't care. Just I'm happy that this exists
Yeah.
and that it's been able to show the full. We've been able to get as much as we've gotten from this. I really appreciate that we have this experience. If not for anything else in this timeline, which for the most part I can't stand, I love this. I'm glad we get this.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, anything else that we have to say about this, or should we just,
I think that's it. I think
or is
we can
that
wrap
it?
it up.
Cool. Well, if you have Ghost, you have everything. This has been Why Does This Exist? I have been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.